Imagine your local airport looked like this. This is Western Sydney Airport, Australia's first brand new international hub in over 50 years. It's sleek, enormous, and somehow finished 7 months ahead of schedule. And it's meant to fix everything that Sydney hates about flying, from delays and overcrowding to that infamous airport curfew. But already, things aren't going to plan. Locals are protesting over aircraft noise, the rail line to Sydney is running more than a year late, and early passengers will be forced onto half-finished roads. This project took decades to get off the ground, but now that it's real, can Western Sydney hold the line? Or will it become one of the biggest failures in Australian aviation? This is the full untold story of Western Sydney Airport. So, to understand why Sydney is building a brand new airport nearly 50 kilometres from the central business district, we need to look at the city's existing hub. This is Kingsford Smith, a sprawling ageing complex stitched together with 3 terminals and a set of runways that barely resemble a modern international gateway. Over the years, it's had all kinds of upgrades: a controversial third runway in Botany Bay, a major overhaul before the 2000 Sydney Olympics, even a master plan claiming it could squeeze in 20 million more passengers by 2039. But none of it really matters, because this airport has one fatal and unfixable flaw. Kingsford Smith is hemmed in on all sides. To the south there's Botany Bay. It's how they squeezed in the third runway, but building anything else here, especially an entire new terminal, would be near impossible and prohibitively expensive. And around the remainder of the airport is densely packed housing and suburbs, and they don't just cause issues with space. Aircraft noise has been a major political issue in Sydney for decades, so much so that in 1995 it led to a strict curfew banning most flights between 11 PM and 6 AM. The issue is that night flights are becoming the norm for lots of global airports, and particularly for transoceanic long hauls and cargo flights, these late night slots are almost essential. And with competition at an all-time high in the Indo-Pacific region, Sydney just can't compete. The airport is also quickly reaching capacity, and without serious intervention, the backbone of Australian aviation could come crashing down, dragging a major piece of the national economy with it. So a solution was needed, and it came in the form of an entirely new airport nearly 50 kilometres west of the centre of Sydney. This is Western Sydney Airport, or if you want to get fancy, Nancy Bird Walton International. It's built to fix everything Kingsford Smith simply couldn't. More capacity, a modern terminal, room to expand, and no curfew. It's the first brand new international airport Australia's built in over 50 years, and it's aiming to handle up to 82 million passengers a year by the 2060s. The runway stretches nearly 4 kilometres, and it's fitted with a next-gen landing system that lets planes touch down even in near-zero visibility. Stage 1 is nearly complete, and already built to handle nearly 10 million passengers a year. Stage 1 might seem small compared to what this airport will eventually become, but building it was anything but, with work starting back in 2018 to clear nearly 1,800 hectares of land at Badgerys Creek and reshape the terrain before any construction could begin. Then came the early infrastructure, roads, drainage, and underground services, laying the groundwork for everything that followed. So with the groundwork literally in place, crews could finally shift their focus to building the runway itself. Beneath the surface, layers of crushed stone and gravel were compacted into place, before being topped with ultra-high durability concrete strong enough to support a fully loaded A380. The terminal itself looks like something out of a movie. Designed by Zaha Hadid and Cox Architecture, it takes inspiration from the Australian bush, with a flowing roofline that mimics the canopy of eucalyptus trees, and sculptural timber columns that stretch through the concourse like trunks in a forest. Construction on the terminal began in 2022, and remarkably wrapped up in mid-2025, 7 months ahead of schedule. The media got a sneak peek, and the headlines said it all. The structure itself is designed for both form and function. There's a 90-metre wide central atrium designed to be bright, open, and naturally ventilated. The check-in hall uses bushland-inspired lighting to soften the industrial feel, and wayfinding has been simplified, with intuitive sightlines and minimal signage clutter. And it's also been built to scale. What's finished now will handle around 10 million passengers, but it's just the first piece in a much bigger master plan. There's room for more piers, more gates, and far more capacity, a luxury that Sydney's current hub just doesn't have. The airport will grow in phases throughout the 2030s, and by the 2060s, the airport could be handling over 80 million passengers a year, with multiple terminals feeding into a full twin runway layout. The roof will boast over 6,000 solar panels, generating huge amounts of solar electricity ready to swap out Australia's mostly fossil fuel-driven grid. But while it all might sound like smooth sailing, not everyone's on board. The airport has faced criticism and backlash since the idea was first conceived in the 1980s, and the main target of this criticism is noise. Western Sydney was built to avoid the very thing that crippled Kingsford Smith, the curfew. No more shutting down the skies at 11 PM, no more slot battles, no more stranded freight flights. At least that was the pitch. But now, these suburbs, like Luddenham and Bringelly, which sit just north of the airport, are pushing back. Now that draft flight paths are out in the open, residents aren't holding back. Online petitions are gaining traction, local news outlets are running stories on projected noise maps, and there are growing political calls for a brand new curfew. It's early days for the airport, but once a curfew's in place, it's almost impossible to reverse. If that happened, it would strip WSI of its main advantage, and Sydney's aviation and economy would be slammed right back to square one. And then there's the issue of getting here. The original vision was simple, a high-speed metro line connecting the airport to the city, but that line won't be ready until at least 2027. That's a full year after the first flight is supposed to land. Early passengers will need to get here by car, taxi or shuttle bus, on a freshly built motorway that, for now, is still being paved. There'll be no direct rail link, and no guarantee that the roads can handle the surge in traffic. And for a project that claims to be world-class, airport chaos because of faulty road and rail infrastructure wouldn't be a good look. It's not a deal-breaker, but it's not ideal either. And in case this all feels like just another shiny new terminal, it's worth stepping back for a moment. Because this kind of project, on this kind of scale, barely happens anymore. Completely new international airports built from scratch in developed countries are almost unheard of. Beijing Daxing opened in 2019 with a price tag of over $17 billion. Istanbul's Mega Hub launched the year before that. And Singapore's Terminal 5, still under construction, is expected to handle around 50 million passengers, but it's not due to open until 2035. If you're interested in Singapore's Terminal 5 expansion, I recently released a deep dive into everything that's gone into it. The link's in the description. Western Sydney, by comparison, is pulling off something rare, delivering a 10 million passenger A380 terminal from a greenfield site, on time and under budget. Stage 1 cost just over $5 billion Australian dollars, around a quarter of what Beijing Daxing spent for almost the same capacity. And I think that puts it in a category of its own. In a world where most developed cities are stuck trying to retrofit their 20th century infrastructure, Sydney's building a new one from scratch. The only question is, can they make it work? Because while the terminal is impressive, this airport was never just about planes. Rising around the airport is what's being called Bradfield City Centre, a purpose-built urban precinct designed to anchor Western Sydney's economy for decades to come. And this isn't a few office buildings and a car park. It's a full-on construction, logistics, research and technology hub, complete with training campuses, freight terminals and dedicated space for advanced manufacturing. Over 100,000 new jobs are projected to be created by the time the precinct is fully built. And by 2035, the area is expected to contribute more than 1.5 billion Australian or $1 billion to Western Sydney's GDP. The government calls it an aerotropolis, a new kind of airport-driven city that connects Australia directly to Asia-Pacific supply chains, bypassing the congestion of inner Sydney. If it works, Bradfield could become the blueprint for economic decentralisation, not just in New South Wales, but across the country. But that's a big if, because actually building the airport was only the start. Over the next year, Western Sydney Airport will be going through intensive testing. Crews will be fitting out the interior, installing everything from check-in counters to baggage systems, and security scanners to signage. Every system will go through simulations. Emergency procedures will be drilled, and test flights will validate every inch of the runway and the surrounding airspace. 4 airlines have already confirmed operations: Qantas, Jetstar, Singapore Airlines and Air New Zealand. But the full rollout is going to be gradual. WSI is aiming to handle up to 10 million passengers annually in Stage 1, but it won't hit that number overnight. What's coming after that is even more ambitious. A second runway and multiple new satellite terminals are planned. By the 2060s, WSI could be one of the biggest airports in the Southern Hemisphere, handling over 80 million travellers a year. But whether that happens depends on a lot. Can it stay curfew-free? Will the Metro line arrive in time to support growth? And can Bradfield become more than just a bold idea? Western Sydney Airport has been talked about for more than 40 years. Now it's finally real. The runway's built, the terminal's standing, the doors are almost ready to open. But for the airport, the difficult part is still ahead. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, please consider subscribing to Airside Vision. And if you're interested, don't forget to check out my new video on Singapore Changi's incredible new terminal.